I've got my top reads from 2019. You won't want to miss them, so stick around. Hello everyone, I'm George Taylor from Imaginerding. Click that subscribe button so you'll be notified whenever I release new videos about theme park books, Disney Universal, and more. Anyone that knows me knows I read a lot. Got well over 1,400 books in my personal Disney theme park collection, and I like to share them. It's one of the things that I'm known for. And over the past year, I've read about 23 different Disney and theme park related titles, and I want to share some of my favorites with you. First up, I'm going to start with a special consideration or a special nomination. Didn't quite make my top list, even though I wanted it to, because technically it was a little advanced, which is strange. So the first book we're talking about, as I mentioned, sort of like a runner-up, is Walt Disney's Ultimate Inventor, The Genius of Iwerks, by his son, Don Iwerks. This book is spectacular. It's really good, but it's technically very hard to get through. This one is geared towards the people who have an interest in film processes, special effects, things of that nature, and a lot of the advances that Disney was able to do. The photographs are amazing. The documentation is wonderful, but it's a little bit much. I liked it, I enjoyed it, but it took me a long time to get through it. So anyone that really loves the technical aspects or wants to learn more about sort of behind the scenes of animation and animatronics should check this one out. Now I've got 7 more titles to share with you that I consider some of my best reads of 2019. Not all of them came out in 2019, but I read them over the past year, and I think you're going to enjoy them too, and they'll help expand your theme park knowledge. First one we're going to look at, grab this one. This book blew me away. I was so surprised and didn't really know what to expect. Ken Weber, Mid-Century Furniture Designs for the Disney Studios by David A. Bossert. This isn't the first book I've read by Mr. Bossert, but it might be my favorite. He did one on Destino, and he did one on Roy Disney as well. This book basically talks about Ken Weber, who helped design the Burbank studio, including all the furniture. The photos and the illustrations are wonderful, and you get such a great look at the inside of the Walt Disney Studios and the main animation buildings, everything they created for that campus. If you've got an interest in animation or Disney history, you need to add this one to your list. I highly, highly recommend it. Next up, I've got Chris Nichols' Walt Disney's Disneyland by Taschen Publications. And if you know anything about Taschen, they put out very high quality stuff. And this was a book, took me a while to get my hands on it. My dad actually gave it to me as a Christmas present last year, and took me a while to read over it. It is an amazing history of Disneyland. Stunning photographs that often go across the gatefold. Well researched, beautifully put together. If you can't find a copy of Randy Bright's Disneyland book that he did, Inside Disneyland, or the Nickel Tour, this is a wonderful book to have, and it's also a little bit more modern than both of those. A fan of Disneyland, you've got to have this one. If you like theme parks, it's very important. Lots of great photos, lots of great history of Disneyland. Next up, I've got Meet the Disney Brothers by Aaron H. Goldberg. I've reviewed a lot of works by Aaron. He writes independently, has done some really great titles about the Disney company, and here's one that he wrote about Walt and Roy. And yes, it is a juvenile biography geared towards late elementary school, junior high school, but any fan of the Disney company is going to love picking this up because it really tells a lot of the untold story. Well, it doesn't untell stories. It tells you a lot about Roy Disney, Walt's brother, the unsung hero of the Walt Disney Company itself, or I guess Walt Disney Productions is what it would have been called back then. It is geared towards, like I said, late elementary, junior high, but anyone's going to enjoy this title. It's a quick read. You're going to learn so much about it. There are a couple of other biographies of Roy that you can get to, especially the one by Bob Thomas, the official one, but I like this one. Aaron does a great job telling the stories, and I have to do a shout out to Rob Yo on Instagram. You can see, whoops, I'm holding it in the wrong spot. I'll do a close-up. He did some illustrations for the title, which are absolutely wonderful. Again, highly recommend this, even if you're not an elementary school or junior high school student, you're going to learn something from reading Meet the Disney Brothers. I've got another really big title for you. Theme Park Design by David Younger. This one had been on my list forever. I think it came out in 2015 or 16. I'll have to look it up. David spent a year, more than a year, working with Imagineering, sort of embedded with them, and all the other great designers and theme park owners across the globe to create this amazing work on theme park design. Now, a little caveat, I haven't read this page through page like the other books. I've read most of it, and it's a book you can just pick up. You look up a definition, like what's a flat ride, a dark ride, different types of theming, and he gives you some fantastic definitions as well as quotes from people working in the industry. Everybody that has any interest in theme design, wants to build their own theme park, or maybe wants to be an Imagineer someday, needs to pick up this book. It is well worth the price tag on Amazon, but loved it. As like I said, it's the one I didn't read every single word, but oh, just love it. I pick it up time to time, learn something new, use it for my history, for my research projects. Can't recommend it enough. This past year, Disney came out with a series called The Great Girl's Guide. And this one is Pencils, Pens, and Brushes, A Great Girl's Guide to Disney Animation by Mindy Johnson, with illustrated by Lorelei Bove. I always mess up her last name, so I'm going to make sure I said it. They did an amazing job with this title. Basically looks at all of the women that had an influence on Walt Disney Animation, the films, even in some cases the theme parks, like with Mary Blair. It's a wonderful title, especially for anybody who has an interest in learning more about the women of Disney, or is an interest in being an animator or wanting to work for the Disney company. It's cute. The illustrations are charming. Really enjoyed this title a lot, and you're going to learn a lot from it as well. So if you've got a young budding animator, this might be the perfect book to get them started. Okay, so we're down to 3 books left, and one of them is Magic Journey by Kevin P. Rafferty, My Fantastical Walt Disney Imagineering Career. I was not prepared for this book. It came out the same time as the new Marty Sklar book, which isn't in my list. I read it, but to me, it just didn't reach the same level as these other titles. Disney fans are going to love the Sklar book, but it's just not the same as this one. Basically, we follow Kevin Rafferty along his career working at Disneyland, where he was washing dishes, all the way up to helping to build theme parks for the Walt Disney Company. There is energy inside of this book, and you can feel it, and it is exhilarating. I was going to say it makes you feel exuberant. I just made up a word. Thank you. You guys can use that. It's exhilarating. You get some inside look into the politics of Walt Disney Imagineering. Nothing ugly, no mudslinging here, but he talks about what it's like to, work for Disney and all of his different projects. I really can't recommend this title enough. It gives you an insight and an inside view of what it's like to design theme park attractions. I mean, he really was a story writer, but he got called into so many different things. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you pick up this book. Again, highly, highly recommend it, as all these others. But yeah, the Kevin Rafferty Magic Journey book, it's very special. There's a lot to it. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm down to my final 2, and The Amusement Park by Steven Silverman, subtitled 900 Years of Thrills and Spills and the Dreamers and Schemers Who Built Them. This is the book I wanted to write. And anybody who has an interest in the history of amusement parks, he does get 900 years, and you can see how thick this book is. It's not quite as thick as the Harry Potter book, but there's a lot. 20% of this, too, is endnotes and things that you don't have to read, the bibliography, the index. So it's a healthy chunk of 400 pages of text all about the history of theme parks. And he goes back as far as, like I said, 900 years to the first medieval fairs, the Renaissance and the charter fairs that they had, the religious charter fairs, all the way up to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Loved it. He tells some dramatic stories. You learn a lot of the key players, how Coney Island came to be, the first roller coaster, the evolution of amusement parks and theme parks. He really touches it all, and I have to tip my hat to him. This is a beautiful work, and it's going to be used 4 years and should basically be the history book for theme park students who want to learn more about it. The only issue with it is it sort of ends abruptly, which surprised me. There's not a big wrap-up to it, but I guess it's still evolving. So you have to take your own thoughts with it. But wow, love this book. Wish I had written it. Kudos to Stephen. He did an amazing job with it. Years and years and years of research went into it, so I'm glad it's part of my collection. And if you're a fan, even if you're just a Walt Disney World fan, there's a lot in here that you'll learn about the history of amusement and theme parks. Oh, definitely can't say enough about it. Now I'm at the final book, and it's the heaviest and the largest, and one of the biggest books in my collection. Okay, here we go. Oh, all right. I have been raving about this book. It's Marc Davis in his own words by Christopher Merritt and Pete Docter. Yes, Pete Docter of Pixar fame. But Chris Merritt's also an author who's done lots of work on Knott's Berry Farm and Pacific Ocean Park. So basically, while I get these out, they're two massive books. What happened is Christopher Merritt was able to sit down with Marc Davis for many, many years and do audio recordings. And in these audio recordings, he would sit down with Marc Davis. They would show him some artwork. He would show him artwork, and Marc would just rhapsodize on the artwork. I've never read a book like this. This is basically a course in how to design a Disney attraction or a Disney theme park. The first section of the book does talk about the early years, and the second volume goes into more of the Walt Disney World and the foreign parks. But there are chapters dedicated to... I'm still flummoxed by the book. It really blew my mind how good it is. Artwork is beautiful, it's gorgeous. But hearing the anecdotes from Marc Davis and Tony Baxter, Mary Blair, all the people that he worked with in this book is just wonderful. You get an incredible insight into what it was like working for Imagineering before and after Walt passed. And it was quite different, the change from before Walt and after Walt, or during Walt and after Walt, I guess I should say. This is the most expensive book on the list, and if you had to choose between any of them, this is the one I would recommend. By far, this book blew my mind. I didn't expect it. It took me over a month to read it because I just was enamored with all of the images, a lot of which I'd never seen before. Almost complete ride-through, so to speak, of the Western River Expedition, which should be enough for most fans to buy this. Amazing concept art from Walt Disney World that never got built. There was supposed to be like a mystery house at Fort Wilderness. That's something I hadn't heard about before. So if you get a chance, buy this one. By all means, all of these books I highly recommend. You can't go wrong with any of them. If you're interested in more books about Disney, check out the videos I've got linked here. I've got a huge collection of Disney books, and I'd love to share more of them with you. Leave me a comment. Have you read any of these books that I recommend, or do you have another book that you would recommend that you read about Disney or theme parks from 2019? I would love to hear from you. I'm George Taylor from Imaginerding, and I hope to see you in the parks. Maybe with a book while you're walking around reading. Nah, it's too distracting. Just go enjoy the parks.